Hello, welcome to the very first episode of Career Hunters. Today I have a great interview for you. It is co-author of the book Guerrilla Job Marketing for Job Hunters 3.0, the co-author David E. Perry. Now, I read this book and it was phenomenal. I mean, this was the one book out of all that I've read that I really wanted to interview the author of. Why? Because this book doesn't just tell you about how to create your resume, how to create your cover letter, and submit your application and follow up with a phone call. No, this goes a lot further than that. This book tells you how to find the hidden job market, the tools to use, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, and even going through and using advanced Google search in order to be able to find those jobs that you are not seeing on any job boards or being posted or advertised anywhere. Heck, this even goes through and tells you how to be able to, reach out to the employer who may not even know that they are currently looking for someone with your skills, and be able to bypass HR and get your name directly on the hiring manager's desk. Heck, this gives you a lot of information, even some information on how to actually, affect the mood of the person who is about to read your cover letter and your resume. Now, I can't go through all the information before the interview, and even with the interview, we are not able to get into everything. The interview did go a little bit long, so I'm breaking it into two parts, part one, part two. Each will be roughly about an hour long. So hang on. There's just a ton of information in there, and like I said, this is the one book that just hammers you with a lot of the tools, information, and everything that you really want to know in order to be able to find the hidden job market, get your name on the decision maker, and how to just crush it in your job search. So, without further ado, let's go ahead, let's get into the interview. But one last thing that I need to caution you about: when we recorded this, a storm had passed through, so there's a few moments here and there where the video or the audio quality is not up to par. But that is only a minor part of the interview, although there is a bit of an echo that goes through the entire interview. I tried to clean it up a little bit, the best I can with the software I have, but unfortunately, the internet connection during this interview was not the best at all times. But still, you get a lot of great information, and you're going to be able to get the knowledge that you want from someone who has 28 years of experience as a corporate job hunter. His job has been finding jobs for his clients and finding people to fill jobs for the companies. So if there's anybody who has the experience, the knowledge, and the information on how to find the hidden job market, this guy will be it. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. And if after watching this video you find the information very useful, you find it great, then please don't forget to subscribe to this channel as I bring you more information later on with more interviews. Thank you, and here we go. I had read your book, and that's what prompted me to reach out and contact you, because honestly it was one of the best books I have ever read on job searching.
Thank you.
And here's why. A lot of books will tell you, just find what you like, find what you're passionate about, and, give you the, cover letter, resume, but they never give you any of the tools in which to actually find the jobs. They're just figure out what you want to do, submit the, resume to the company, and hope for a call. But you gave a lot of strategic, how to make the approach, how to find the decision maker, and that's what I really liked about your book. And so before we dive in too much further, can you give us an overview about you and what you do?
Okay. The first thing that the audience will probably want to know is, do I have any experience applying for jobs? And the answer is yes. I've applied for approximately 1,000. I think we counted the other day. It was 1,073 jobs. I've gotten 1,021 of them. Let me explain that. I'm a recruiter. I'm a professional headhunter. I've been in the business now for 28 years. I've run my own firm, Perry Martel International, for 26. What I do every day is essentially the same thing job hunters do. I go looking for projects. I go looking for jobs to do, whether it's hiring a CEO or years ago, an entry-level person for retail. I have to go and compete in the marketplace to find the opportunities and then convince an employer to hire me. I've now done 1,019 of these projects. I've negotiated $250 million in salaries. It's over $1 billion in total comp. And in the 28 years I've been doing this, I've made exactly 3 hiring mistakes, and I've fixed all of them. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm a professional headhunter. I was asked, it's almost 10 years ago. I was asked 10 years ago by J. Conrad Levinson if I would be interested in writing guerrilla marketing for job hunters. And I said yes, of course, because I'm the one that hinted about 6 months earlier that we should write this together. I had just written a book called Career Guide for the High-Tech Professional, where the jobs are and how to land them. I had asked Jay to write the foreword. I'd never met him, but I asked him to write the foreword, and he agreed. So when I handed him his copy of the book at a seminar he was given in Toronto, I live in Montreal, I jokingly said, hey, we should write guerrilla marketing for job hunters. And 6 months later, his agent called and said, hey, want to write guerrilla marketing for job hunters? And I said, sure. So this is the 3rd and final edition.
And final?
I will not write a number 4. I put those, I don't need to. Because everything that everybody ever, most everything anyone needs to know about how to get a job are in the 3 volumes. The last volume uses social media extensively, and the last volume is as much about how to be found as how to find. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But I also put those barcodes in the book, and I intend to use the barcodes. You know those scanner codes for your smartphones? I intend to use that to continuously update the book, so I don't have to go back and write another one. I mean, it's a couple thousand hours for every single book to get it out.
So you're talking about those QR codes.
That's the term. See, I'm not even a techie. Thank you.
Yes,
and in fact, when I put the QR codes in, that book, that edition, was the first time QR codes had ever been put in a business book. I had to fight like you wouldn't believe to get my publisher to put them in. I used the Microsoft ones, and Microsoft did an article, extolling the virtues of putting QR codes in books. But that was the first book that had ever had them put in.
Yes, and those QR codes are very helpful in a lot of situations. And, I may come and ask about your opinion over some different ways to use them as we go forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start diving in to more of the questions over what people can do to set themselves up to be able to find a great job. Because one of the things that, got me started here, why I decided to create this show, is because I've realized, like many other people, I absolutely suck at job hunting.
Everybody does.
Yes, and so
everybody does.
So, and my generation was pretty much raised as, computers, everybody's going to want you, you're Gen Y, you grew up with computers, everybody's going to want you. And then just as we're starting to graduate, from high school and going into college, these job boards start coming out, a Monster, Career Builder, and everyone's just like, just submit your resume to there, just click apply to every position that you can think of, and you're going to land a great job. Turns out that's not true. Who would have thought? So this is, in developing this show, is me doing a research, on how to conduct a proper job hunt, and then sharing that information with as many people as possible, so that, because getting a good job can set yourself up, for a life of success versus a life of hardship and struggle. And that's what I want to try and help people with. So I guess the way I do this is more of a chronological. I'm going to start from back in, just in college, and then work our way as we get older as far as what we can do.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say a student is in college right now, and they're, whether they're a freshman or a senior. What can they do while they're still in college to show that what they have learned has given them the skills and abilities needed to land not just an entry level, doesn't pay you anything position, but actually a well paid position, maybe starting off, in the $60,000-$70,000 range as opposed to the, $30,000 to $45,000 range.
Okay. Well, the difference between getting a job, a good job, and a great job comes down to a couple of things. Experience, obviously, attitude, and reputation. No one's ever asked me this question before, but experience, attitude, and reputation. Experience. When you're coming out of college, what an employer wants to know is, what do you know? And how much time am I going to have to spend now that you've gotten out of college and you actually think you know something? How much time or how much more time are we going to have to spend educating you about our business and our organization? Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. So what you need to do, if you can, and most people can if they think about it, is you need to get some kind of experience. I'll give you an example in a second. You need to get some experience in the industry that you want to go into. I always tell job hunters who have been around for 10 or more years, if you want to get a job, you have to know who you are, what you want to do, who you want to do it for, be able to pick your top 10 employers. Almost impossible when you're a college grad. However, it's not totally impossible. If you understand the industry you want to go into, let me give you an example. I had a friend years ago. Well, he's a friend now. I didn't even know him years ago. I was recruiting for a tenant fit-out coordinator for a construction company, and this one particular guy just kept calling me every single day. I mean, like, I didn't take his call. It went on for a week or more. He drove me nuts. Dominic is his name. Finally met this guy because he just wouldn't leave me alone. I'm not suggesting people do that, okay? It's not necessary. Most employers would just get upset. I enjoy the persistence, and I honestly was busy at the time. This guy wanted to be in construction, and I said to him, I got your resume here. I said, you're what? You're like 12 years old, and you don't have any experience? He said, sure, I have experience. I said, what do you mean you have experience? He said, I worked as a janitor in a hospital. I said, and what makes you qualified for a tenant fit-out coordinator for a commercial construction division, even though you've just graduated with XYZ? And he said, you got to be kidding. He said, I know, as the janitor, part-time janitor at night and on the weekends for this hospital, I know every single inch of that hospital. I know what the design flaws are. I know why they should have used this paint instead of that paint. I understand why they should have used terrazzo instead of the vinyl flooring that they use. I understand where they should have put the wires rather than where they put the wires, and why they had to retrofit the HVAC system. And of course, not being a construction guy myself, I had no clue what he meant. Okay, so as a recruiter, you got to understand this thing. As a recruiter, just because the guy sitting across the table from you, if you're a student, is recruiting for a job, it doesn't mean they know anything about that job or have any experience, okay? They may just be parroting information that they heard from the employer, whether they're a third-party recruiter like a headhunter, like an agency, or whether they're a recruiter for an internal company. They may or may not know anything about the job, and chances are pretty good 99.9% of them won't have any clue. I was one of those guys. I hadn't got a clue. But the difference was, I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. Let's sit down and have coffee. So we did, and we had this discussion over coffee. And he took me through why his background and what he had done prepared him to look at design issues, do tenant fit out, because a tenant fit out coordinator looks at flooring, walls, HVAC, all that kind of stuff. When you buy a condo or a house, you get bare walls, and you and your significant other have to pick, the the flooring, the paint, the type of kitchen, the lighting, all that kind of stuff. That's what a tenant fit-out coordinator does. So this guy explained all this to me, and I said, oh, that's interesting. So I called my client, and I said, listen, I got this guy. He might be 23 years old. I know we're looking for someone with 10 years experience. Let me tell you why he doesn't have 10 years experience, and you're going to interview this guy anyway, other than the fact that he won't leave me alone, and I'm not really trying to foist him off on you, but he won't leave me alone. He is persistent, and he does have the experience that we're looking for. And I took him through the conversation that I had had with Dominic. So set the interview up, kid goes over, has the interview, client calls me after the kid leaves and says, this is 1980, like a bazillion years ago. This is 1985 or 86. He said, we had a budget of 25 to 28 for this position, okay? So 3 decades ago. And he said, I like the guy, we're going to hire him. I said, so like, he's got no experience, what am I going to offer him, 25? He said, no, just give him the 28. I said, why? He'll take the 25. Here I am arguing as a recruiter, right? I'm arguing, I pay him so much. He said, pay him the 28, because if you don't, he's going to be in my office every day asking me for the other $3,000. It's not worth it to me. So just, David, make him the offer for 28 and he'll be happy. So what has all this got to do with your being a college grad? If you go and get experience in some area of what you want to eventually do, then you can translate that experience. My son wants to be a doctor. What did he do? He went and volunteered inside a hospital at the, I don't know what they call them in English, the kiosks, selling, newspaper, chocolates, and all that stuff. Because he's inside a hospital, he's getting to meet nurses, he's getting to meet the doctors, he's understanding what some of the issues are. He has more chance of getting into medical school and becoming a doctor than someone who doesn't do any of that volunteering. And I can go on and on and on and on, industry after industry. That's the kind of stuff you want to do. So you get experience. Your attitude about who you are and how you present yourself, very important. We're having this discussion today. And really, most people don't have the stones to have a discussion when they go for an interview. They sit back. That's why I asked you, do you want me to answer the questions yes or no, or do you want to have a discussion? Most people go into an interview, most candidates, and they sit and they answer because they're terrified. Questions, and they think these questions that they get asked are deep, probing questions. And in all honesty, most interviewers are probably about as nervous as the person they're interviewing. Probably haven't spent more than 5 minutes looking at your resume. May understand the position, may not. But here's the critical issue. If you've been invited in for an interview, they want to hire you. Full stop. They have a problem that for some reason they've seen something in your resume that indicates to them that you might be the solution to that problem. So if you've got an interview, you're going to get hired unless you blow it. So what you have to do when you go for an interview is take the employer quickly into a discussion, rather than sit and answer interview questions. And people say, well, how do I do that? That's impossible. They're in charge. It's really easy. Give you another example. My sister, and we're going to go back way back again, okay? 1990-something. Graduates, teacher's college, goes out to Vancouver on the West Coast, gets a job. She's got like 2 years experience. She applies for this job as a kindergarten teacher. I don't know if this is in the book or not. It wasn't one of them. Applies for this job as a kindergarten teacher. Now, the kindergarten teacher jobs are highly coveted. So she calls me and she said, well, I'm probably going up against 300 or 400 other people for this interview. And they had an 8-month time window to do all these interviews before they selected this teacher. And I said, okay, well, what do you want to know? She said, well, what can I do to differentiate myself? I said, well, first of all, go in and be yourself. I said, they'll never forget you, but that's a whole nother story, right? And I said it nicely. I said, but Monica, what's important to you and what's important to them? It's an interview with them about you, but it's really about them because they've got a problem that they're trying to get you to try and solve. So why don't you come up with a list of questions and go in and ask them those questions almost right off the bat. She said, well, I can't. It's a panel interview. I said, absolutely you can. I said, here's what you do. You go into the interview, and the first thing you say is, thank you very much for inviting me. I said, and then you tell them, I'm a little nervous, as you can tell, I'm a little nervous. So do you mind if I ask you a couple of quick questions just to ground myself and orientate myself for this discussion? She said, they'll let me do that? I said, all you can do is ask. Anyway, goes, has the interview, calls me back, and I said, how'd it go? She said, I don't know. And I said, well, what'd they ask you? She said, well, not really very much. They didn't ask any questions? She said, no, not really. I said, how long was the interview? She says, about 9 hours. I said, what? I said, okay, Monica, exactly what happened? So I went in, and the first thing I did is I did what you said. I said, do you mind if I ask you a couple quick questions? Because I'm really kind of nervous, and I want to ground myself. And they said, yeah, fine, go ahead. So the first question I asked them is, can you explain a little bit can you explain to me your philosophy on teaching? What's unique in this board? I said, and? She says, and we talked. And they ordered in lunch. And I said, what do you mean they ordered in lunch? What time did it start? She said, it started about 9 o'clock in the morning. I said, what time did it finish? She said, about 5:30 in the afternoon. And I started laughing. She said, oh my God, did I blow it? I said, no, Monica. You did exactly what you're supposed to do. You went in, you had a discussion. You talked about philosophy, expectations, success factors, what they expected from their kids, all that kind of stuff. You talked about what they wanted to know from you without actually having to sit there like a dummy and answer questions. You got into a discussion. She says, oh my God, do you think I blew it? And I'm laughing. I said, no, I don't think so. I think you'll hear back relatively soon, within the month. She heard back a week later. They canceled all the other interviews. They hired her. She was maybe 26 at the time, probably youngest kindergarten teacher ever hired in the district. And she's been there now. Well, I can't tell you how old she is, but she's not that much younger than me. She's been there a long time. So there's an example of, we have experience, we have attitude. And the last one I think I said was reputation. And that really is, I was looking the other day because I talked to my kids about this. I said, if you've got a job and you're going to leave, get a letter of reference. I have letters of reference and recommendation that go back to my first training job as an Army cadet officer. They go as far back, which is 1979. I have letters from my boss at the yacht club when I was a dock boy pumping gas for 4 years at $1 an hour, plus all the tips I could hustle, and I could hustle a lot. Reputation is what it's all about because people want to work with people that have great skills. Everybody wants to play with Gretzky. Everybody wants to play on Gretzky's line. Everybody wants to play on Michael Jordan's line. Okay? You want to be the guy that everybody wants to play with. You don't want to be the last guy picked. Like in school, you don't want to be the last guy picked for dodgeball. You want to be the first or second. That's all about reputation. And reputation comes from delivering the best you can, asking a lot of questions along the way because nobody knows everything. And most employers' greatest fear is that they hire someone and the person screws up and they don't find out about it until it's too late. So I tell my kids, when you don't understand something, stick your hand up. Even if it's right away, stick your hand up. The first couple minutes, say, sorry, can you explain it to me again? To make sure you clearly understand what's going on. And when you do that throughout life and it becomes an attitudinal thing, like it's a life skill, your reputation precedes you. And so this is important because now we have all the social media stuff, right? Yeah. So I get a lot of requests to join, to connect with me on LinkedIn. I was the 113,709th member. Like week 3, right? A lot of the recruiters, a vast majority of the recruiters around the world can be traced back to, you can see what everybody's number is because everybody has a number. I made some of the initial invites for recruiters all over the world. And because social media, like LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, you need to manage who you are and what you're doing. So I get all these requests for LinkedIn all the time, and I will read every single one of them. I've got 32,000 direct connections, so it's like 40 million indirect, right? And every week I get 300 or 400, and usually Friday afternoon when I'm pretty much brain dead, I go through them because I have to. I have to accept some, and to do that I have to delete a pile of others. It's just the way it is. So every week I accept a couple hundred and get rid of or divest myself of a couple hundred. So I read all these requests and I'll accept someone, and then I'll go and look at their profile again, look to their personal website, look to their Twitter, and see if it's someone I want to be associated with. And many times, I can't tell you how many times, because I didn't count, but many times, I'll find, and it happens a lot with women, God knows why. I've gotten, gone to someone's personal website and found pictures of them hanging upside down, semi-dressed from a pole. I don't need to be associated with those type of people, and I don't want to be. So it's really important that you manage LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. If you want to be found and asked for the best jobs, you really do have to monitor that stuff quite carefully. It doesn't mean you don't be yourself, but you got to be yourself with a little bit of taste.
Yeah, you got to be careful about what other people can see you as, because perception is reality. And as
I
I've
wish
heard,
I'd said it that way. That's excellent.
and as I've heard many times, that in today's world, you are who Google says you are.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when somebody who doesn't know you is trying to look you up for the first time to see if you might be a fit for the company, and that beer keg that you're doing a headstand on may not be the um, image that they want to project for their corporation or their business.
Yeah, it might not. It might be. But I'll give you an example. But if they don't know you, they can't judge you, but they will anyway. And a lot of people, David Perry is a very common name. And I remember, it's probably 6 or 7 years ago, before my mother died. She called me up and she said, "Did you know that you're a porn star?" And I said, "What? Have you been talking to my wife?" She says, "No, no, no. She says, I learned this new thing on Google. It was Google Images or something like that." She said, "You're a porn star." And I said, "Okay, listen, I don't even want to ask what you were doing, Mom. And I don't really, but thank you. I'll go and make." So I became David E. Perry, because David Perry is a porn star and relatively well known. So I became, on my books, David E. Perry. Just to clarify that. Just to clarify that. So those kinds of things happen all the time.
Well, there's getting through and trying to make sure that when someone looks you up, that you identify yourself in a way that you're not getting mixed up with somebody else. I mean, you can go online and you can type in my name, Jacob Johnston. You're going to get a whole lot of profiles that pop up, between Jacob Johnston, and even through that they'll even use Jake Johnston. That will pop up because that's a common nickname. So being able to manage, your online presence so that, when you give someone your resume and they search for you, that your actual profile comes up and not somebody else's. Because even with, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, you got your picture up there, but when you submit your resume, your picture's not on there, so they're not able to distinguish between you and another person with your name. So
And it's very important. I don't mean to interrupt, but while you're on that topic, it's really important to have a LinkedIn profile. People, I think, are well aware of that. A lot of people aren't aware that they should take their LinkedIn profile, throw it through one of the shorteners like Bitly, and stick a link to it on their resume. That way, if you're doing a one-pager or a 50-pager resume, it doesn't matter. If the person wants more information, they don't have to ask you for it. They can go and get it instantly. Very important.
well, I was actually going to get to that, later on, about maybe
That'd be
using
good.
the QR codes on your resume so they can scan it and go straight to your LinkedIn profile. So we'll get into that discussion, maybe, here in a little bit. But I wanted to do one more follow-up question on what those in college can do to prepare themselves for that first job. And there's a debate about getting that experience between student groups and organizations on campus and internships. I have a feeling I know which way you're going to go on this. As far as the internships, um, being good, and that's where you're going to want to try and go with. But if you don't get that internship, how are those student groups and organizations looked at by recruiters when trying to seek your first job?
Great question, and I'm not a big proponent of internships, by the way. It probably surprised me, but I'm not. I think student government, I think sports, I think having a job where you've been for the same place for a while, getting a dirt underneath your fingers, whether it's a restaurant job or a construction job during the summer. I look at those things like I ask job hunters one question when I'm interviewing them. It doesn't matter whether it's for a director position or a CEO. It's the same question I ask everybody in an interview, and it's very simple. I say, take me back to the year you're getting out of college, and take me through your career up to now. And the reason I do that is I want to look at who they are as individuals. And a lot of people will say, well, I got out of college and I decided and I was going to take the summer off. Or I got out of college and I decided I was going to go to Europe. Or I got out of college and I went straight to New York. It doesn't matter what they did. What I want to understand is why they did it and whether or not as they progressed, were they or were they being pushed along or pushed out? So I only ever asked the one question. What's this got to do with college? Well, I like and have hired people, many people over the years who have had summer jobs, have started something like Student Pro Painters. Did you have a pet when you were? Sounds silly. Did you have a pet at home? Why is that important? It tells me a lot about whether or not you can take care of people and you're responsible. Did you have a summer job? Did you have any other kind of job? Did you start your own business? I want to understand whether they're entrepreneurial, whether they take responsibility, or they're just drifting through life. And most recruiters that are interviewing college level grads are going to be looking for things like initiative, stability, being able to work in a team environment. I hate the concept of the whole aura around team, because you need to be a member or a leader. And I'm not really looking for a hangers-on. I'm looking for leaders. So you have to be very careful when you say, "Oh, I'm a great team player." Yeah, but are you the captain, or are you the schmuck warming the bench?
Yeah, and one of the things that has always gotten to me about the whole, team environment is, what is considered a team environment these days is really a stretch. I mean, everything's considered, a team environment, even if, your entire work involves just you having no interaction, with the people around you, just processing work, and yet it's considered a team. So maybe, I don't know. To me, it seems like the word, team kind of gets abused in a way.
Team player has been abused enormously. HR asks for it because, I have a relatively negative opinion of HR. I don't know anyone that's ever gotten out of Harvard, Yale, Cambridge, Oxford and said, "Yeah, I'm going to HR." It just doesn't happen. But I digress. So putting HR making HR responsible for finding your best and brightest, I have always found to be an oxymoron, in full bloom. Now, I'll get calls about that, but I'm used to it. Yeah, you need to distinguish when you're talking about a team environment. They're going to want to know whether you're a team player or not a team player, and whether or not you can actually make the hard decisions. I'll give you an example. My oldest daughter, Krista, 24 years old. When she was 20. She was at an arts school in communications, and they had this contest once a year. There's like 150, 200 students. And they took the top 12 pieces that were created, art pieces that were created by the best students, and put them on display in the forum for the people to come, parents to come and see, right? So out of 200, you got 12 people that they're showcasing. So my daughter was one of these 12 people, and she didn't like the piece that they chose, so she went and asked them, why did you choose that piece? Asked the teachers. And they couldn't really give her, in her mind, a satisfactory answer. And she said, okay, well, I don't like that piece, so I'd like you to use this piece. And I said, no. It has to be this piece. She said, well, either you use this piece or I'm out. So they took her out, which is fine. That's what she had figured was going to happen. What she did is next she went down the hallway to the principal's office of this college and said, listen, I'd like to rent the following 3 rooms and the hallways in the school. Here's the money to do that. And so while the teachers ran an art show in the foyer for the top 12 students, my daughter ran an art show in the 3 largest rooms in the college and all the hallways. So the other 188 students whose art wasn't picked were all given a space on a wall to demonstrate their stuff. It was the best turnout they ever had for this art show. Because you can imagine, top 12, maybe their parents come, maybe their friends come. Everybody came for this thing, and everybody got to display it. Why is that significant? Because she was punished severely for having done this. She was quite within her rights, and she paid for it and was all above board, but she embarrassed the teachers. And so her name was taken off of a bunch of lists for awards and stuff like that. Now, was she a team player or wasn't she a team player?
Both.
Yeah, so the answer is you're correct. And the teachers looked at this the wrong way. So you got to decide what's right and what's wrong, because you're going to be asked these kinds of questions in interviews, and you got to be able to say who you are and what you're all about. And a year later, Krista calls me and says, I'm starving to death in Toronto working at Starbucks for $10 an hour plus tips. And she said, I'm coming home for the summer and going to get a couple jobs, make a lot of money, and go back. And I said, fine. So she comes home for the summer. She applies to 14 jobs, gets 13 interviews, gets 12 offers, takes them all. And she took every single one of the offers, she took it. And she worked for a day, 2 days a week, until she found 4 that she liked, that she could fit in her schedule, 4 jobs. Worked 100 hours a week. And one night I pick her up at this yoga studio. She's into yoga, right? And she says, Dad, I think I'm going to become a yoga instructor. And of course, she's 20 or 21 at the time, and I'm her father, so I don't know anything. So I just nodded my head, and I said, that's interesting, honey. I said, didn't it take a couple of years? And she said, no, I just met this woman, came back from India, and she got her certification in 2 months, and she said, I'm going to go to India. And I'm her father, and I go, okay, right. Next thing I know, Chris has saved enough money, checked herself into an ashram, and bought herself a ticket to India. And away she goes. Is she a team player or not? She's a team leader.
Yeah. Okay, a team leader.
She's a team leader, and
she took charge.
She can do stuff on her own. So she can play with everybody else, or she can lead. She can follow when she needs to. She's 24 years old. Last summer she couldn't get a meaningful job, so she did a fundraiser on Rocket Hub. One of these crowdfunding sites, and she raised enough money to take her and her boyfriend from Vancouver. He's a photographer. She's a yoga instructor now, officially. So she raised enough money to go to Panama. So they fly to Panama. She lands in Panama, and she walks across Panama, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and back again, teaching yoga to random strangers. He took pictures. They blogged about it, and people paid to follow them on their blog. Yeah. Team leader, team player, entrepreneur. These are the kinds of experiences you can do as a summer student and afterwards that employers go, oh my God, you did what? Yeah, well, she's been to the Ukraine, so Peru, the Ukraine, India, Nepal, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and probably a couple I don't even know about. And she's 24 years old. That's the kind of experience employers are looking for. Not everybody gets that kind of stuff. Some do, but people are responsible for their own lives once they turn 18, right? So you get to do whatever you want. So can you get out of college and go away to Europe for a year or two and have a blast? Absolutely. Is it going to hurt you in your job search? No. No. It's going to help define you. And then after that, you just have to find the right employer who respects or appreciates what you've done, and you bring that set of soft skills to their work environment. Does that answer your question, or am I too far off for you?
Well, I believe that actually does answer the question, because you've gone through and shown some ways that you can get experience, part time, with your example of the guy in the hospital, walking around. You've gone through, talked about reputation, how to manage that, which is important for college graduates. And then in this case, when you're talking about team player versus leader, student groups, organizations are, just taking charge, as your character and your ambition, as far as being able to show whether or not you're entrepreneurial or, able to collaborate well, is just as important as the skills, sets and knowledge that you learn towards that specific industry, because it's not always just about what you know how to do, but they also want to know how you go about doing it. Are you the take charge, or are you the, stay in place and wait to be told what to do?
Yeah, so if you're, you ask the question, how can you go from making being a grad who gets hired for a $30,000 or $40,000 a year job, or these days a $20,000 or $25,000 a year job, to someone who gets hired and paid a lot more? That's the way to do it. Those are some examples of ways to do it. It helps you separate yourself from the crowd, and it helps the employer very very quickly see that you're different. And and for all of the it just blows my mind. For all of the energy that most people put into being unique and special, it all gets washed away by 99% of the people when they go and put their standard resume together. Black type, white paper, 1, 2, 3 pages long, full of responsible fors. Who cares? I know we're drifting a bit here from the conversation, but everybody's unique, and if you want to get a good job, one where you'll actually get some satisfaction and be able to make some decisions other than when you're going for lunch, if you get to make that decision yourself, you need to step up and step out and be yourself. And those are a couple of examples of people, and I know thousands, but there's a couple of examples of people that did it early in their lives. Krista is 24. She went off to BC to find herself 3 years ago. And, she's doing personal work on herself that most people don't get around to doing until they hit a major crisis in their 40s and 50s, if ever. So she's taken a different tact, and she's sorting through her stuff before she goes out gets deeper into the working world and has no opportunity to do that.
Okay. And moving along now, because I think we've extensively covered what can be done while you're in college. And maybe this is related, but this can be related to college or in any other stage of your life. What are some of the best practices that people that you see of people finding ways to find an open position or to make that initial contact with the person who has the authority and the decision power to hire you?
Great question. Easiest thing to do is come up with your list of top 10 companies you want to work for. Doesn't matter whether they're hiring or not. Doesn't matter whether you know anyone or not. If you go to the if you go to the intro of the book, there again is Krista, right? Picks the top 10 companies she wants to work for, did a targeted email outreach campaign, ended up with an offer in a couple of days. The Starbucks coffee cup keeper, again, is predicated on picking the top 10 companies, whether or not they're looking for someone or not. And when you pick your top 10 companies, What you need to do next is network your way in, but you don't network with people that work there. It's almost a forget it game. We teach this strategy called networking with the newly departed. I don't mean dead people, but I mean people that used to work at the companies. Because if you're trying to network your way into a company, chances are your call that day is the third one they've got that day or that week, and everybody over the last 10 years has been networked to death. What you really want to do is if you've got your top 10 list of companies, you want to know as quickly as possible whether or not you really want to work there, right?
Yeah.
And if you spend all this time networking your way in, and then you find out through the interview process that, they're schmucks, I don't want to work there, you don't get that part of your life back. I mean, if it took 10 hours to do all this, that's 10 hours you'll never get back. The more expedient thing to do is pick the top 10, go to Google or LinkedIn, do a search for people that used to work at that company. So if you want to go into marketing at ABC Corp, you go to Google and say Vice President Marketing ABC Corp, resume. Boom, up will come all the resumes of the people that used to be VPs of Marketing at ABC Corp. And you pull down their resume and you phone them up and you say, "Hi Jacob, my name's David Perry. I just pulled your resume." And you can do this whether it's live or on a voicemail. "My name is David Perry, and I just pulled your resume down off of Google. I understand you used to work at ABC Corporation. I'd like to ask you a couple of quick questions, if you got a minute." And then leave your number. People will call you back. 9 times out of 10, people will call you back. And then what you do is you ask them a bunch of questions that you would typically ask an employer when you go in an interview. But because you're asking it with someone who used to work there, they're going to tell you the truth. They will. They're going to tell you the truth because they have nothing to lose. And they're not liable, right? They don't have any hands-off or agreements that says, we can't talk about what goes on in this corporation. They'll tell you pretty much anything you want to know. Then you get through your list of 10. And if you've still got 7 or 8 that are in your top 10 and people are consistently saying, "Oh yeah, great place to work. The boss has really got the ear of the CEO," or whatever. And this has been done at every level, including entry, okay? Every level. Then you get a pretty good idea you want to work there, and you've asked the question. One of the questions that you ask is, what are the top 3 issues that the company's facing, that the industry is facing? So what happens, Jacob, when you go to an interview at one of these top 10 companies? You already know you want to work there. You already know what their issues are. You already know how you can help them. So you can have a discussion like we're having today. You can have a discussion about their issues, their problems, what you've done in the past, even if it's nothing, you're a straight grad. What you've done in the past that can help them out. And all of a sudden, you're not there having an interview, you're having a business discussion. I'll give you an example, okay? Because people are going, "How is that possible, David?" Years ago, I went to work for a company called Consumers Distributing. In the States, there is a company, I'm not sure they're still around or not, called Service Merchandiser. Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, see, I'm just way too old. Anyway, it was a retail catalog store, okay? And I went to this interview, and I coming out of college or university, I got a degree. I've got my I won the Sword of Honor. I've got my commission in the Armed Forces. I just come back from leading an expedition to the Arctic for the summer. And the guy looks at me and he says, and by the way, when I went up to the Arctic and led this expedition, I decided when I was there, I was going to work for one of 3 companies when I got back. McDonald's, Canadian Tire, who you've never heard of, or Consumers Distributing. And the reason I was going to work for any of those 3 companies is because they all had a reputation for taking trainees out into the back warehouse, putting their feet in a block of cement and throwing them in a pool. And it was sink or swim. But you learned so much about management, it wasn't silly in a couple of years. So I get back from the Arctic, Consumers has got an ad, I go in, I do the interview, and the guy says, "Why would you want to work here?" And I said, "You got to be kidding." He goes, "No, seriously, why would you want to work here?" I said, "This is the only place, the only store in the entire country where anyone from, kid to grandparent can walk into your store and find exactly what they're looking for at the price point they want to pay." I said, "You sell 39 irons. Why do you sell 39 irons?" You sell 39 irons because you want to give everybody the right to shop in your store. That's why I want to work here. You are the great equalizer in Canadian retail. I was 22. Was I full of shit? Maybe a little, but not really. Because I honestly, I'm a shopper there, right? He hired me on the spot. I was there 3 years. I had a blast. Hired 451 people, fired 2, because they were on drugs, literally. But there's an example, right, of what I just did the same thing. I picked my top 3, not my top 10. I picked my top 3. I knew exactly why I wanted to work there. And I could say it to their face. And I could have a discussion about their issues on retail because I'd gone around and interviewed a couple of the store managers before I went in my interview there, right? And and quite frankly, they weren't the brightest I'd ever met by a long shot, which made me feel good because I thought I was going to be a star amongst a bunch that weren't. But even that little bit of research that I did back in 82, 83, 82, helped start me off in my career.
Okay, so one of the themes or trends that I'm getting here is that even though technology may have changed, some of the best practices are still the same. As far as preparation and going through and actually researching versus going in, saying, "Hey, this sounds like a great company. I'm going to go in blind." But actually making, reaching out and doing your research.
Right.
You know.
10 years ago, candidates would come to an interview with a recruiter, whether it was myself or a recruiter inside a company. And one of the first questions they'd always ask is, well, why should I work here? And the HR person would turn around and just pitch like crazy to, because you were solid gold. That doesn't happen anymore, Jacob. Now it's like, okay, I need a job. Here's why you should hire me. So all of the power, per se, has gone back to the other side of the desk, to the management side of the desk. And the only way you can equalize that and give yourself an opportunity to move yourself forward in the process is to consider yourself an equal at that table, right? Rather than you come as a supplicant to answer questions, if you come as an informed individual to have a business discussion about their issues, and that's research and attitude, okay? And you can help shape in their mind why they should be hiring you rather than somebody else. I mean,
and so this is where
this hasn't changed, but what has changed is you now have technology that makes getting this research done a lot faster. I mean, in the old days when I started as a recruiter, I had nothing but a telephone and the white pages and the yellow pages. If I did research, it's because I found somebody who would talk to me about their industry, and I took them out for dinner, and filled them with liquor and learned about the business. Now you can, Google will tell you just about anything you need to know about just about anything you need to know about.
Great interview, and I hate to cut it off right there, but as I stated before, this interview, was long. It lasted close to 2 hours, and, I decided just for time restraints that I was going to split it up into 2 episodes, part 1, part 2. Next week's episode will be the conclusion of this interview, part 2. And yes, in case you're wondering, I did change locations. Obviously, there's better lighting here. I got a green screen, but I'm not planning on using it for this. That's for a completely different project, which, is why there's better lighting. So next week, we will conclude this interview with David Perry, and we will start getting more and more into what you can do outside of, high school and college, and talk a little bit more about if you're unemployed, if you're underemployed, or if you're just looking to switch industries. We'll dive deeper into that more next week. So, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode number 1. I got more interviews coming along the way. And so I will see you next week. And please, once again, don't forget, if you like the content that you see, don't forget to subscribe.